Yeah, let's keep going.
The topic today is working class internationalism. It's actually about section 8 of our party program. One of the things that makes us unique, in the United States, is that we're part of an international movement. And I know we feel very isolated in this country and in Texas and in the South, but we're part of a major movement of over 118 political parties and over 100 million people that are, communist and workers' parties and allied organizations that go even beyond the 100 million. So that's what we're going to talk about today. The first question I have for you is, why should we care about international affairs or what the CPUSA has to say about working class internationalism and anti-imperialism? Why does it make a difference?
I mean, because the US controls global financial systems and the biggest military power in the world, and there's no way we can enact, write the working class here without also destroying the oppressive system on the working class of the world.
People care about whether they can impact their own lives, if they have control over their own lives. People care. Otherwise, they would not get involved. Yeah, go ahead.
It gives us strength. It makes us feel more powerful. Kind of like when we came here today, it makes us feel more powerful. So being back with all these people around the world makes us feel more powerful to help make our lives better.
Well, there's power in unity, right? In numbers. There's power in numbers. Let's go on to the next one. Let's see. So here is I wanted to give credit because we created a lot of videos for the first international conference that we had in Houston. Created a lot of videos, and videos are important nowadays in terms of visual impact as far as raising consciousness. And Kyle is a very important part of our international department. Kyle did a lot of this, was done with support of Kyle, and Dylan was very involved in all of this. And unfortunately, he moved on, and we lost him. We're going to lose him to Chicago eventually. Yeah. Right now, we lost him to Louisiana. So this is a contribution they made to the conference, and I thought some of you may not have seen it.
The Communist Party USA's first ever international conference. This weekend will prove to be an important moment in the history of our party, as we host for the first time fraternal parties from around the world. As the world continues to shift away from Western hegemony and towards multipolarity, there could be no better time than now for a conference dedicated to internationalism and anti-imperialism. Internationalism has a somewhat vague definition. As communists, however, we must grasp the importance of proletarian internationalism. Without an understanding that the working class of one country shares in the same struggles as the working class of another, an understanding that we are allies instead of competitors, nationalism and false consciousness will disrupt our unity and diminish our ability to demand what is right. We must educate one another and replace division with solidarity. Within the imperialist core, communists have a unique responsibility to counter imperialist narratives propagated by our ruling class. Their attitudes towards any movement that threatens their ability to extract profit from the global south lead the nation into jingoism, militarism, and nationalism. As such, with this event, we hope to counter these narratives, foster international solidarity, and to inspire principled anti-imperialist action. During this conference, we hope to shed light on these shifts in the balance of global powers and discuss how we can best organize in opposition to imperialism. We look forward to the participation and presentations from our speakers and fraternal parties, and hope this first international conference of the Communist Party USA inspires us all and gives us something to remember for years to come.
Powerful.
Bravo! Yeah.
So what is the opposite of internationalism? If we say we espouse internationalism and international solidarity, what is the opposite of that?
Nationalism.
Nationalism. And is nationalism something new? No, it's been around for thousands of years. In fact, it's been around before Marxism, right? Nationalism says, my country, right or wrong, it's what we do, and we don't care about anybody else. It's the Chinese that did it to us. That's why we don't have any jobs. The Chinese did it. the scapegoat and other people. And instead of saying, no, we're all workers all over the world, and we need to unite to change our lives and create justice. So another reason why we need to talk about internationalism is because we're witnessing an unprecedented realignment of the world order right now. We're going to be able to tell our grandchildren, hopefully, or our children will tell our grandchildren that we were there when things were changing, and they were changing in a major way. Things are on its way. How long it's going to take, I don't know. But if things are moving, U.S. imperialism is in decline. There's no question about that. It's just a matter of how much and how fast. And what it's doing, U.S. imperialism is not only in decline, but it's also putting lives at risk to maintain a dominant hold as a unipolar world, unipolar power in the world. And this started after, unipolar power started after the dissolution of the Soviet Union, which was in the late 1980s and early 1990s. But the U.S. as a major imperialist power came after the Second World War, at which time the U.S. dollar became the reserve currency of the world, and then we had a world that was rules-based, and is primarily rules-based, made in the United States. The World Trade Organization, even the UN, the World Bank, I would say that FMA,
This is all Bretton Woods, right?
Bretton Woods was where the dollar became the federal, the reserve currency of the world, the petrodollar. If you want to buy oil, you have to buy it in U.S. dollars, because when you settle, you have to pay in dollars, which means a country that buys oil that's not the United States has to trade and make enough money to buy dollars and then go and buy oil. Imagine the convenience and the benefit if you could buy oil, which is the biggest commodity in the world. If you could buy it and you print or you create dollars in a computer, you can put in more zeros. Now you have trillions of dollars available just by pressing the zero. But
this allows them to avoid the constraints of the real economy, basically.
That's right. And I mean, the only concern they have is if you go too far, then you create a problem with inflation, But otherwise, go ahead.
I saw a very interesting talk by a socialist named Paul Hochstein recently, who basically compared the dollar as reserve currency and the system of printing dollars as analogous to the way that the Iberian empires, the Spanish and Portuguese, would extract gold from Latin America, or the way that the British Empire would levy taxes on their colonies in South Asia. But here, with the dollar system, basically whenever the U.S. prints dollars, it's effectively enacting a British imperial levy on the entire rest of the planet, compelling them to trade in that unfavorable way.
Right. Now, Hobie, you mentioned the standardization of the dollar as the Federal Reserve currency of the world. At that time, when they did it, in order to get the confidence of other countries, they backed it up with gold. Then they decided, well, we don't have enough gold to cover all the money we're creating. So Nixon said, let's get off the gold standard. And so now it's only backed up. All this 30, what is the national debt of the United States of it? Over $30 trillion. And the Federal Reserve, just remember during the 2008 crisis, the Federal Reserve created, I don't know how many more trillions of dollars worth of money.
And because the petrodollar exists, when that happened, you didn't see crazy inflation. You didn't see all these problems where you had quantitative easing in Europe,
Right.
and they weren't based on the dollar system. So when they had to do the same thing, to print money to get out of those debts, they faced a lot worse economic conditions for people than we experienced here for the same crisis.
The U.S. created the SWIFT system, and the SWIFT system is an institution for the payment system for the world. So why was this created? Because it's powerful. If you control the payment system of the world, what happens if a power like the Russian Federation decides not to follow your lead anymore? You just cut them off. Well, they cut them off the SWIFT system with economic sanctions, which is economic warfare. But I think you were making a point earlier that this change in the world order and the change in the currency and all that, there's a precedence in the past. It's happened before. Who used to remember the Roman Empire? Remember the British Empire? They all think of the past. Remember at one time the pound sterling was the major currency of the world? Well, no, it's no longer the major currency of the world. So that's changing. U.S. imperialism, the second idea here, the realignment, the U.S. imperialism is in a global battle to contain socialist China and its special partner, the Russian Federation. Otherwise, if you don't understand this, then you would not understand what's going on in Ukraine. You're not going to understand what's going on in Taiwan or what's going on in the Middle East. This is going on, and so the main target is socialist China, and Russia just happens to be its main ally. Yeah, go ahead.
They're taking advantage of Russia though by trying to ignite a new Cold War and tying them somehow to the Soviet Union. It's insane, but to us, because we're educated.
They're trading on old prejudice
Yes.
that created the anti-communism of the past. A lot of people in this country and around the world still do not know that Russia is no longer a socialist country.
Yeah, Putin is not a communist.
No, but they still think he is.
Yeah.
So it's easier to put horns on Putin because they still think he's a communist.
Playing time in China.
And thirdly, what's another change that's going on in the world is that the developing countries are economically aligning with BRIC nations, independence, and participated in China's Belt and Road Initiative, which is huge, and building infrastructure and de-dollarizing. Who has de-dollarized recently? Saudi Arabia, of all people. And then Brazil is now trading with China in a major way, using the yuan instead of the dollar. That is huge.
For entry into BRICS.
Hmm?
Yeah, analog has that.
Yeah, Mexico has applied formally to join the BRICS countries, and so has Argentina and about 20 other countries. So this is huge. This is a realignment of the whole world.
I want to throw them in there as well, because it's been a battle since the 40s, 50s, is Iran. Iran has been trying to be pushed for a regime change forever, right? For a long time. And the United States they haven't really chilled out, right? But back, I think, in the 90s and early 2000s, they went, in Iraq and Afghanistan. But with Iran, they have put a blockade and extremely bad sanctions on them as well. Yeah. Like bad. I'm talking deadly bad sanctions and a blockade on them, right? And the one thing about them is that, in history, they put the Shah in there, after they overthrew the democratically, was a dead, right? But to this day, they are a prime example of imperialism as well, because they have a shit ton of resources, oil, they have that water strait, they have so many paths there. And that's why we look at it materially when we look at these countries that are being absolutely propagandized, bullied, isolated, things like that. It's like, yeah, okay, sure, we can hate your ideology and what they do, etc. But they have those resources that make that profit and a profit system.
And one of the benefits of this realignment going on in the Middle East is that now, for instance, China has mediated between Iran and its war with the Gulf area countries.
Israel now too.
And now they have peace, and I think Israel's going to have to figure the writings on the wall, right? They're going to have to come to some agreement, So this is a major major change in the world. That's why we have to be concerned about international affairs. So there's a new, another way to put it is there's a new balance of power. Among those new balance of power in the world is the socialist countries such as Cuba, Vietnam, Laos, the PRK, and the People's Republic of China. People's Republic of China being among the biggest in there. By the way, the People's Republic of China is actually the largest economy in the world in terms of purchasing power parity. So it is huge. Well, because they sell to the whole world. You can't go to Walmart, you can't go any place without running to almost all the products are made in China. We were talking about the BRIC countries. This BRIC country stands for Brazil, Russia, India, China, and South Africa. And they're expanding. But right now, they got 40% of the global production and 60% of the global population in those countries. And it's expanding. And it's going to expand as early as this summer. So it's already huge. And it's greater than that of the G7. Remember who the G7 is, the 7 largest developed countries in the world that are allied with the United States. They used to be the G8 before they kicked out the Russians. But now it's the G7, but they're losing economically. And they've been overshadowed by the BRIC countries. BRI is even bigger. Okay, so this is what the program is divided into. This is the actual title of section 8. It says International Capital versus International Solidarity. Capitalism in the era of monopoly and imperialism, the International Front for Peace and Progress, and International Working Class Solidarity. So it covers all those 3 main sections. Well, I want you to leave with 3 main ideas, leaving here today. The first is that imperialism is global capitalism. Don't confuse imperialism with old colonialism. It's a different animal. Imperialism is the last stage of capitalism, as Lenin said in his book. And because capitalism has changed, instead of producing commodities for sale and making money from the sale of commodities abroad, it makes money by taking the surplus capital and using it to exploit other countries. And so that is that. So imperialism is global capitalism, and we need to make sure that people are clear about that. Some people think that imperialism is just a policy, a bad policy on the part of the United States. It's not just that. It is bad policy, or bad acts, but it's actually, it can't be anything other than capitalist.
Also, there seems to be a misunderstanding that simply military invasion implies capitalism. That's so far from. I mean, that may be an aspect occasionally, but that's such a minor part of the whole system.
What happened in Bolivia? It wasn't a U.S. invasion. They actually created a coup. The coup with using the local bourgeoisie, the local ruling class to create a coup. And they want to do the same thing to Mexico. They haven't figured out how to do it because AMLO is covering his bases very well. But they did it recently to Pedro Castillo. He's in prison right now. He was the elected president of Peru. And then they try to do it in Venezuela and in Nicaragua. They try to do it in Nicaragua too. So and they remember they ousted and put Lula in prison. Now Lula has won back, become the president by popular vote. And Rousseff, who was after Lula, she was kicked out through a soft coup, through the parliament, threw her out because of some technicality. She had moved money from this budget from here and put it over here temporarily. Well, that's every government does that because he cannot plan exactly, right? They realize things have changed, so I have to shift some money temporarily, but anyway, it was on technicality. Now Rousseff is gonna be the head of the new development bank of the BRICS countries. So that's great.
And one thing that's great about the new development thing is that even though China dominates all the rest of those countries economically in terms of like just total output, they don't own any larger percentage than the other major countries of the bank. So they have no other control the way that the United States kind of controls the IMF World Bank, which I think is really interesting. And then I also wanted to say there's a very specific effort to turn imperialism into invasion. Yeah. So it's like the biggest thing is like US is an imperialist, Russia is an imperialist because it invaded Ukraine. Like an invasion is not imperialism.
Exactly.
It's a different thing.
I'm glad you mentioned that because that does confuse people. In fact, even within the communist movement, there is confusion. Some political parties in the communist movement say that this what's going on in the Ukraine is an anti-imperialist battle, just like the First World War. The Greek party
Makes sense on purpose.
is done on purpose because they say that China is not even socialist either. So now you can say they're also an imperialist power. So if the United States gets into a battle with China, we're going to sit on the sidelines saying, well, we're going to stay out of that.
Did you say anti-imperialist or inter-imperialist?
Inter-imperialist is what I should have said. You know, yeah, that's right. Yeah. Pete?
Just you mentioned the current president of Mexico not being, under the microscope just yet. Actually, it's luckily not covered very well. I saw a news story a couple of weeks ago that popped up in feed of mine about how he claimed to see fairies, and they were trying to claim he was a crazy person because he wrote a little limerick from home of indigenous folks in a place he was in about their spirits and whatnot. And the U.S. media, the Yahoo at least, was trying to claim that he's slipping from reality. So the wheels are emotional already.
No, he's attacked every day.
Yeah, he won't be.
And he's
fit to run Mexico.
He's attacked by the Financial Times, the New York Times, the Washington Post, the Economist of London. They all attack him every day, and they're providing ammunition to the local anti-AMLO ruling class. And in Mexico, it's the same way. All the corporate-owned media, which is the vast majority of all the media, they're all anti-AMLO. But how does he counter that? He counters it by every day his son asked AMLO, what is it that you do? His son didn't have any idea what his dad did for a living. And he said, I talk. I said at 7 o'clock in the morning, I'm talking to the Mexican people for 2 hours every day. And on the weekend, I go visit them in all the different localities. So therefore,
on YouTube, right?
Yeah.
and I do it on YouTube. So if you don't have time to listen to me in the morning, you can listen to me at 1 in the morning or whenever you have some time. On the weekend, you can listen to what I'm saying. And he did it. It took 4 years for him as the president that he has a big microphone, right? Took him 4 years before the people said, no, you're absolutely right. That is the way we should do things. Well, imagine if that's what the president of Mexico did after he got 30 million votes, what is it going to take in the United States for us? I mean, it's not enough for us to make one little video or it's going to take a lot of consistent effort every day. Yeah, I'm sorry.
I'd like to raise a question about, because I noticed that these attacks on AMLO in the press here really escalated in the past few months. And it seemed like all of it happened all of a sudden, that there was a lot of gears turning. It was happening before, but this is a new, but it seems just to amplify even more. And I was wondering if anyone had any ideas about why that is. Why are they doing it escalating now?
Go ahead.
He's starting to nationalize a lot of industries. And then his democratic process, he's trying to change it completely. Because previously, before him, the president was, of course, a pocket in the USA. But how he won that election was he paid off the citizens. He went to poor communities and offered them like tickets for groceries, free groceries, if they voted for him. And they were just sitting there taking the ticket and voting, right? And so he destroyed that. And then, of course, he's calling out the US for their imperialism out loud. He's, what was it, he's calling out the fentanyl thing, he's actually going after a lot of the, cartel. It's one funny thing about him is that also, when he does speeches, he will pull up documentaries, USA documentaries about drug use, he'll pull up like Twitter posts, articles talking about how they are slandering Mexico and then start calling out their own problems. And it becomes like, he's really letting the people know that a lot of their problems are coming from a foreign nation and that he can help change and improve their material conditions by giving them more nationalized industries and kind of focusing strictly on them. And
So
all of that,
those, yeah, those are all valid reasons. But when AMLO was asked the same question you asked, he was asked that, why is all this attacks? His response was, it's election time in the United States.
Yeah, yeah.
They're gonna have presidential elections next year.
Yeah.
So Bob Menendez is out there attacking Mexico. And so is Marco Rubio and Ted Cruz. They're out there. And now Lindsey Graham is creating all this diversion, saying that we have to attack Mexico because Mexico is killing our people with fentanyl. And therefore we have to intervene. And the cartels in Mexico, they're going to be considered terrorist organizations so that we can intervene.
What
Mexico.
Biden
is no, he wasn't pushing that, but he's going along with it to some degree.
That's true.
Yeah, he did not. He has not refuted that. In fact, he does it like Barack Obama was. He says, "I'm gonna deport more Mexicans to prove to the U.S. public that I am tough on illegal immigrants."
Okay, he's part of the China.
Yeah.
They're very excited about how much more of the wall was built under Biden. Like, we were able to do it, or.
And the Abbott is still like, he's not predicting it, it's so dumb, they go. It's all marketing, and I'm telling you, we gotta three things.
So the two other main ideas is we need to promote international working class solidarity.
Yeah.
Because imperialism and capitalism is a global system. We have to have international solidarity. That is, the workers in this country should not get into a fight with Chinese workers or Indian workers, because they didn't create the problem. They did not put in the capital, create manufacturing in India or China. This was US companies took the capital to China and India so they can get a higher profits. So we have to come up with international working class solidarity. And thirdly, we need to help build the international peace movement locally. That is, we have to get involved because we need to join the International Department or the Peace and Solidarity Commission in order to effect change. And because certainly war is not in our interest. Now, the United States, it says they're going to defeat the nuclear power called the Russian Federation. There's no way, huh? You're going to defeat a nuclear power. And they also said they're raising they want to raise a war with China over Taiwan, which is ridiculous. And this are all also, China is also a nuclear power. Some people don't know that, but it's a nuclear power.
Yes.
And Bernard? Yeah, so I mean, so it's important for us to get involved in the peace movement. I think, but it's important to realize that a Mexican president once said that peace is a product of justice. Remember how we used to cry in demonstrations? No justice, no peace, right? Because it is a product of. So what is the solution in the Ukraine? Respect the national security interest of Russia. Don't put NATO next door and don't put nuclear weapons, don't put weapons next to them and so forth. So you got to respect other people's rights.
Yeah,
Something.
I only should, sort of our geographic focus for the moment, and actually go back to one of our, like, points in our presentation regarding Palestine. Building the peace movement does involve working in solidarity with Palestinian organizations.
Yes, right.
And I was disturbed by what was in our program, and I think we really need to wrestle with that and make a change. That program is implying that we still support a two-state solution. A two-state solution is a total fraud. It's a total joke. Israel has ensured that that's the case now because of how much land they've occupied. And there's no credible Palestinian voice calling for a two-state solution anymore that I'm aware of. And I think our party needs to be, just catch up with the times and realize that a two-state solution is absurd, and that Israel is an apartheid state.
Yep.
Right? It is an apartheid state, and anti-Zionism is not anti-Semitism. I think we need to be very clear about that, and none of that, it was totally silent on all of that. Is that because we have pushed back internally, or what?
Bernard?
Years ago, when we went to the National Convention in San Juan, one of our comrades working Palestinian rights got up on the floor and put a resolution forward against the two-state theory. I spoke in favor, and it passed. And Sam Lynn, John Martel, they were really pissed. But it didn't really talk about what was needed instead, and that's the problem. But you're totally correct. The West Bank cannot even exist because it doesn't even have enough territory to have an international airport. Its military is totally under Israeli control, and they don't even control the water. So it's a joke. The two-state theory is kept up by the imperialists and by the collaborationists on the Palestinian side because they make a lot of money off of it, but it doesn't free anyone. What needs to happen is there needs to be one state, as there should have been from the very beginning, and now we need a fight for civil rights for the Palestinian people within Israel, just like we had. That's the South African Party has had that position for years. They see it as an apartheid struggle, but two states is not going to do it.
Oh, we are in contact with the Communist Party of Israel, and they recently sponsored, and we participated in a international webinar with them about this issue. So we do need to revisit it, and we need to go ahead and do work at the state convention. We need to go ahead and make the argument.
Yeah.
Starting now. Yeah. This is a quote from Michael Parenti, one of my favorite authors. He says that the expropriation of the third world brings us to another revelation, namely that the third world is not poor. We don't go to poor countries to make money, he says. That's true. There are very few poor countries in the world. Most countries are rich. The Philippines are rich. Brazil is rich. Mexico is very rich. And so is Chile. Only people are poor. I'm going to make the same point. He says, Mexican people are not, Mexico is not poor. It has a lot of gold and silver and now lithium and petroleum and all that. The problem is that people are poor, but they're not. Mexico itself is not poor.
The Spanish didn't conquer the Aztecs because they were poor and the gold.
Exactly. There's been billions for the capitalist Europeans and North American powers that have carved out and taken the timber, the flax, the hemp, the cocoa, the rum, the tin, the copper, the iron, the rubber, the bauxite, the slaves, and the cheap labor. These countries are not underdeveloped, they're overexploited. That is true, absolutely. That is the nature of imperialism. So it takes a good writer to make this the point. All right, so what is one expression of our international unity? It's the international meeting of communist and workers' parties. At one time, it used to be the Communist International. Well, now this is something similar, but not exactly the same thing. But it's a meeting of of international communist and workers' parties, and as I mentioned, there's 118 of them in the world with over 100 million people, and we're part of that movement.
If I could comment just a second on that. That is an aspect, that confers such credibility on our clubs. You know, as we're recruiting folks, the very fact that we have fraternal relations with the Communist Party of China, with the Communist Party of Vietnam, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, just on down the line, all 118, you know, is something that absolutely no other left group in this country can claim. That plus our 100-year history. So, you know, we're making a mistake if we don't emphasize that. Please continue.
That's right, and I said this is important. This is something that distinguishes us from others. I was recently in an online meeting that was organized by the Communist Party of China to talk about modernization theory, and there was 12 of us in that meeting from the Communist Party USA. And who is the keynote speaker? Xi Jinping himself, General Secretary of the Communist Party of China. There he is, talking to us and introducing a new concept, the Global Civilizations Initiative. And who was at the table also talking? Maduro was there. Yeah, and Ramaphosa from the South Africa, from the Communist Party, you know, I mean, he's the president of South Africa. And then who was one of the participants along with us? Evo Morales. That's something. I mean, when you were in that company, so you're in good company.
Yeah. Where's Rosanna right now?
Rosana's in China right now representing our party at a meeting on so you know it's we have to be proud of that. So this is an organization, kind of an organization chart showing of SolidNet. SolidNet .org is the basically online organization of the communist and workers' parties. And down below, you see it complemented by anti-imperialist organizations. And what are those anti-imperialist organizations that complement this other organization? It's the International Union of Students. It's a member of this SolidNet. The Women's International Democratic Federation. They're also huge. The World Federation of Trade Unions. The World Peace Council. I think Bernard was saying, you know, we were one time the peace movement, and this is the World Peace Council, and then there's others. So that doesn't include the Young Communist Leagues and so forth. This is the 20th, this is a photo of the 20th International Meeting of Communist and Workers' Parties in Greece. This is a meeting at the 21st meeting of Communist and Workers' Parties in Turkey. And here is some photos where the Communist Party of the United States was asked to go to Mexico to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Mexican Communist Party and make it a trilateral meeting with Mexico, the US, and Canada. So we were all there making, you know, working together. And this is an outdoor meeting that was being held. I think if you second from the left, you will see the General Secretary of the Communist Party, Elizabeth Liz, from the Communist Party of Canada, Chris Rowley. And then they invited us as a host. They invited us to go see the mural of Diego Rivera at the Secretary of Public Education building in Mexico City. And see the hammer and sickle up on top? And there is Frida Kahlo and Diego Rivera's picture on the right. And so it's amazing. You go in the Secretary of Education building and there's all this revolutionary murals. Siqueiros was there. Siqueiros also, and Diego Rivera. So here, this is very interesting. A lot of people don't know this, but on the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party in Mexico, AMLO enacted an official ceremony in which he took the remains of the presidential candidate of the Communist Party in Mexico, Valentin Campa, who was a trade union leader, and the general secretary of the original Communist Party, Arnoldo Verdugo, to the rotunda of illustrious persons of Mexico. So they were honored with military escort, military honors and everything. And on the right, you see there's Verdugo, and down below that is Valentin Campa. And those, and a lot of people don't understand that a lot of the ex-communist members of the Communist Party of Mexico, the original Communist Party of Mexico, serve in the existing administration. The treasurer of Mexico was a communist, and the second in charge of the Gobernación, Secretaría de Gobernación, is a communist, and they built a very strong leftist cabinet in Mexico, of principled people. They're not going to be co-opted so easily by money and in every other way. So we need a strong peace movement, as we said earlier. Our program says that U.S. is the main imperialist power in the world and is therefore the main threat to world peace. And that's exactly right. So I mean, unless we don't care whether we get burned up in a nuclear exchange, unless we don't care that there's a lot of people in this country that are concerned about the direction this country is taking on international affairs, then we have to do this. The Communist Party and the progressive forces in the U.S. have a responsibility to our people and to the peoples of the world to build this broadest, strongest peace movement opposed to U.S. imperialist aggression. That is true. Peace sentiments and movements worldwide constitute a major force against imperialism and aggression. Just like it was during the war in Vietnam, remember? I remember because I was there, some of us older people, we were there. Right. Imperialism is inhumane and exploits working people globally. In addition, our working people have material interest in the U.S. global military aggressions. Tax dollars are being used to invade, control other countries and regions. They are desperately needed to fund adequate services, programs, and benefits for our people. 800 billion of discretionary spending in this country is now going to the military to sustain more than 800 military bases all over the world. He said, why is it material to the defense of this country to keep 30,000 troops or more in South Korea?
Protect our investment.
Yeah, that's what they're for. Remember that somebody was putting up, here's all the military bases in Puerto Rico. Why do we need to be there? Are we afraid that we're going to be attacked by Mexico or Canada?
Maybe will be attacked by
Oh, maybe the Puerto Rican people, yeah. They're going to get even fresh for throwing towels at them.
And we need to defend ourselves from the aggression of the Chinese, putting their country next to our military bases.
Exactly.
You're gonna have a peasant or a mouse farming revolution.
This was a forum on demilitarization of home and abroad, unity for peace and international solidarity. This was the 31st National Convention of the CPUSA that was happening in 2019. This is a great graphic that was put together for that. The 1919 was the 100th anniversary of the founding of the Communist Party USA. We've been around a while. And this program that we're talking about this weekend has been building up for years and years based on the experiences of years and years of struggle of the Communist Party. And the way we're different from the Democratic Party and Republican Party, in addition to all the other major differences, is that this program is a condition for membership. In other words, if you don't agree with this program that was democratically developed, then you probably, the Communist Party is not where you belong. We actually believe that we ought to implement, even if we disagree with some aspects of it, you implement it because that was the decision, the democratic decision of the party. And that's why we need to be familiar with what our program says. Now, if you're in the Democratic Party, a favorite tactic in the Democratic Party, because I've been involved in that struggle, is to make a fight for reforms to the party platform. And so everybody get all riled up and say, we're gonna change the platform, say this or that. That platform is not binding on anybody, especially any elected official, right? It's not binding.
2016, we were the first time we actually got all the signatures from the floor and forced change on the platform and jack shit happened.
Yeah, exactly, nothing is gonna
And we
happen.
got hundreds, we killed it in 16 and nothing happened. We
If
took,
you go back-
oil money, there was like several things we got on the platform, it means nothing. I was so idealistic, but.
If you go back and look, if you look at the Democratic Party platform, it looks very good.
Yeah, and they lost none of it.
Yeah,
Well, I noticed that you compared it to the public. That's great.
it looks great on paper. The 22nd meeting of Communist and Workers' Party took place in La Habana in October of last year. And this is the working group that put together the plans for that meeting in La Habana. And there is our comrade Rosana as representative, addressing the international meeting in La Habana on the behalf of our party. This is a contribution made by the Communist Party of India at that meeting. And look at who's addressing that meeting here is Comrade Miguel Diaz-Canel, General Secretary of the Communist Party of Cuba, and President of Cuba addressing the 22nd meeting of Communist and Workers' Parties. There he is in a working meeting, along with everybody else. So what can you do? What can you do here in Austin? What can we do here in Texas with respect to this issue, this implemented this part of the program? We gotta join one of the working groups. It's one of the alternatives. Join one of the working groups of the International Department of the CPUSA. Apply at redworldreview.org. Kyle belongs to one of those working groups. And Dylan used to belong to the working group. And so anybody that wants to join any of the working group, where you're actually going to do some work. We don't want you to just come and talk. You're actually going to do some work to promote what we're saying here. You can join the Peace and Solidarity Commission, and Dylan also joined the commission and is leading the effort in solidarity with Cuba. So he's, we raise money for Cuban medicine and so forth. Yeah.
Just to say, I've been running the two things to Kyle.
That's correct.
And just spreading the word that they are out there. So, you good comrades, make sure for the part of things that for it. Don't be shy. Tell them about it.
And
otherwise, you have to wait for a summit. Have the right information. So be a good comrade. Make sure you're talking to people.
And Dylan from here, he recruited, I think, JT Chapman of Second Thought, and JT gets millions of views on his programs. No, he's real professional. They look very good.
And he's in the DFW, right? He's in the Dallas Fort Worth Club.
Yeah, he is. He is a member of the Dallas Fort Worth Club.
Yeah, where is JT?
Well, he's right now. JT has been attending our meetings, weekly meetings, because he's helping us with the second international conference that's happening on the end of July of this year. July 29th.
Just one day.
It's a one day, and it's gonna be all online. It's not gonna be a hybrid meeting. It's very difficult to do that.
Yeah.
But the intention there, we already have Vijay Prashad, He's not aggressive.
Very.
And then we also have the Communist Party of Cuba and many other Communist parties. We're trying to get the Communist Party of China also to participate. They participated in this last webinar that we did.
Yeah, they were good.
Yeah.
So I think it's gonna be as good or better, more compact. And we've been working every week on that, putting this, because it is important, as you said, Hobie, it's important. Because there's a lot of people out there, like when I came into the communist movement, I came by the path of anti-imperialism. I didn't come through the path of socialist consciousness or anything like that. I came through anti-imperialism. Because my heroes were Che Guevara, Fidel Castro, you know, so those were my heroes, you know. And then eventually I realized, well, you know, they're all socialists, right? So what's going on here? What's socialism all about? You know, so then I became a premature socialist, you know, when I was
The United States would call it all communists anyway, so.
Yeah, that's why I think so far. This, if we don't get lived in a conforming economy, whoever's gonna be fine. Yeah.
Oh, this is the international department. This is just a graphic, shows that we have a secretariat now. And this is a good structure for us to consider as we're going forward, is that the structure is that the heads of each of these committees, this is the Committee on Communications and Publicity. Amian has that. He's in Vietnam now. They call it Internationalist Committee, but it's actually International Fraternal Solidarity or Exchanges Committee. Hello, Comrade is one of the committees within the Exchanges Committee, and they're going to different countries. They went to Portugal and interacted there with the Portuguese Communist Party. Went to the Avante Festival. Then they went to Chile and visited with the Communist Party of Chile and participated in May Day. And now they're going to Cuba. They're in Cuba now. And the job of the international department is to talk with the Communist Party of Cuba, for instance, says, look, you know, we have commerce going over there. And can you work with them and help them out? And see, they want to go see, they want to be involved in a demonstration on May 1st, or they want to be they want to see how the communists work in the community. They want to see some actions, you know, they want to be involved in that. And we pay for everything. They don't pay for anything. We pay for everything and we arrange everything. We just ask them to facilitate with somebody to kind of tell us how to get, you know, how to participate in this, how to get information, where can we take videos and so forth. We also host a lot of fraternal parties. And we recently was hosting the, you know, foreign ministers and, you know, all the people in New York and also in DC. So they're coming to this country, like the General Secretary of the Communist Party of South Africa was here in New York. So we made sure that we had arrangements with them to visit with our co-leaders. And then we have this fraternal solidarity. We recently put together a webinar in solidarity with the people of Peru. And we had on there 2 of the communist parties of Peru on there to talk about the resistance in Peru to the coup. So this is something that's managed by that committee. And then we have the Technical and Education Committee that is responsible for the international conferences, the Red World Review. If you ever get a chance, go in the Red World Review, and then YouTube. So we're trying. This is what does all this have to do? It's raising consciousness, right? We got to raise consciousness, and then we have some material support for our commerce around the world. And so the Secretariat is the collective body. We haven't talked about organization. Maybe Bernard will talk about it, but we talked about trade unions having a organizational structure based on democratic centralism. Well, that's the structure of the Communist Party. That we make decisions collectively, and then we execute them, you know, centrally. Just like if the union is gonna go on strike, then you know, people think of the strike vote, then everybody gotta be on strike, we can't have scabs, we all gotta do it, whether you agree with it or you voted in favor or not in favor, you can't scab the union. I think that's the last one. Thank you.